a regular radio show that gets broadcasted live on Pendle Community Radio, as well as on our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook groups. Today, we're going to be talking about immigration, as well as its importance and its relationship with healthcare. Today, I've got three guests who are familiar guests, and I will try to do their introductions, as I guess they are from a generation where the word Amazon was just a river. So Dr. Azmi, thank you for coming on. You are a retired consultant surgeon from Wigan, and you graduated from Jawaharlal Nehru Aligarh University in 1973, I take it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Very good. We are honored to be here.
Great. And Dr. Javeed, thank you for coming on. You are a retired consultant psychiatrist from the northwest of England who graduated from Bangalore Medical College in India in 1971. And thank you again for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here with other guests. Thank you.
Great. And finally, Dr. Mulla, you studied in Karnataka Medical College in India, and you moved to the UK in 1976. You've worked in pediatrics, and currently you're retired and live in Scotland. And thank you again for joining this discussion.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a great honor.
Great. So, Dr. Azmi, I'm going to start with yourself. What does the word immigration mean to you, and why did you immigrate?
Immigration means to immigrate, to move from one country to other country, and which is not for the medical people, for anybody who comes from, goes for different reasons. Either you immigrate for a profession or job, or for your, what you call, financial thing or education. So that's what is immigration. What other question you asked me?
And what made you immigrate? What made you
move? Yeah, that's a very good question. Being a doctor during that time, as we are from India, our all medical education, books and everything has been linked with the British system. We used to read same books which used to they were teaching in UK universities, medical colleges, and so we had a lot of the information about medicine in UK and in India, and majority of people, I'm not telling everybody, majority of the graduates at time, they all wanted to go to England, not for the financial, majority of them not for financial, for education, for higher degree. But higher degree, English degree was very famous there in India. Still it is. That was the reason for me to move higher education in medicine.
And if I come to you, Dr. Javeed, is that a similar reason to why you decided to move from India?
Mine is a slightly different mode of transfer from India to UK. Means the way I have come to UK, you can call it similar to what you say, hijrat. I was initially, I was not keen to move out of India. I was a lecturer in surgery for 3 years. Then it was difficult to get into post-graduation there for whatever local reasons. So my first opportunity I got, I resigned from my job and I came to Iran just for job, so that I thought that I could settle down there and then do my post-graduation later on. So while working in Iran, though it was a turbulent period, 4 years of Shah and 4 years of Khomeini in the middle of the Iranian Revolution, still I managed to come to UK in 1980 to get my full registration in GMC. And unfortunately, at that time, the war started. I had to go to India, go by road via Pakistan to Iran. So it's a long story. Anyway, because of war also between Iran and Iraq, it was becoming dangerous to stay in Iran. So I went to Saudi, and from there, after a few years, I decided that I have my full registration. So at that time, I went for two reasons. One was to get higher education, and the other important thing was my family was there, so that my family will also have a good support, and so that they can also study and thrive in the better environment. So that was the reason. I went first, and then my family came later.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Javeed. And Dr. Mulla, it's obviously you graduated from Karnataka Medical College, which is a beautiful part of India, and this was always coming to UK one of your primary objectives. And what was the reason for you to migrate this way?
Yeah, we learned about British history, and my father used to tell about British history and how nice the people were, how intelligent they were, their manners and all the rest. So as a child, I had a dream one day to visit England, for a historical reason. And then I worked on that, and somehow, went to medical college, which was recognized by the GMC. So it was quite easy route for me to come there. And basically, as my colleague, Dr. Azmi said, education was considered top priority there. And the education was, the people who were educated in England were of a high status. They had a high status and they were honored, they were respected. So I had to achieve that. So I came from that point of view to England, basically to get education.
And Dr. Mulla, how did your family respond to your wish to immigrate, to move and leave India? Was this a temporary measure, or was this something that you felt from the beginning that this was going to be a permanent move?
No, it wasn't going to be permanent. My aim was to come to England and get a postgraduate qualification, and at the same time make financial security for the rest of the life, in 5-10 years, and go back. And that's what I actually did. After 10 years of UK service in NHS, I did go to Saudi with the aim of going back to India and making a little bit more financial security, as those days, the Middle East had a lot of money with the oil revenue. And so I decided to go back to home via Saudi, but fate decided differently. And for children's education, I had to come back for good.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Azmi, if I move on to you, are those reasons quite similar for you? And what were the benefits of you going through different places? Because you also worked for a short period of time in Ireland, experiencing different cultures, different way of life. Are there benefits to immigration from a personal level?
No, not actually, because at that time, when in 70s, as we had all medical colleges in India, majority of medical colleges were recognized. So we did not have any problem for coming here. Ireland at that time was same as UK. They have same currency. There's no visa restrictions. So when you apply for the job at that time, you just see where you can get a job. So I had a friend of my actually relative of my friend. He was in Ireland. He said, Hakim, you apply Ireland as well, because it's same thing. So I applied for the job, and I got a house officer job, which is as you know, the first job in training in near Dublin, and so I came there. It was not for the moving reason. It was same purpose. Like I was told, Ireland and England is same. So that's where I got my job as a house officer in general surgery, where I wanted actually. That my aim was to fellowship in surgery, FRCS. If you have time, I can tell you. One of my teacher in surgery, Professor Amar, he was FRCS. Everybody loved him. he was honored and all those things. So that actually I can say was my aim. So moving from there to England. So what I did in Ireland, I got all my training system there. So I got my primary in FRCS. You have to do exam, primary and final. So I did it from Dublin College. Sorry, there are three actually, which is recognized: Dublin, London, and Edinburgh. I think Glasgow is there as well. One in Glasgow. So that's the reason. Then when I did it, then I said, let's move to the mainland. So I came to UK. After UK, again, now here's the journey, you can say to me. Now I've completed my all education, all my training. As I said, did I tell you I moved here in 74, just 1 year after graduation. And from 74, I passed my fellowship 79 and moved to UK, mainland in 81. And here I was for 5 years, did all my surgical training and everything. At that time, it is called as SP, now SPR, but it was a registrar. While I was there, one of my friends in London, he was going to Saudi. He said, Hakim, why? My first name is Hakim. So they said, why don't you join for a while there? My children were probably 3 or 2 years age. So if you want to have some time there, I discussed with my consultant here. They said, Hakim, yes, if you want to, that's fine. Go and have a few years there. So I got a very good job, very, very nice hospital. It was more or less like a Western hospital in Saudi. It's called Yambo. It's one of the Western coast near Red Sea. And so that's the reason, sir, that I moved there. Then after as Dr. Mulla just said, when the children were up a certain age, we had to come back for it. And luckily, I was so happy that Vegan Infirmary, where I was a registrar, they offered me a consultant job. So his blessing Allah was there. So
okay. Dr. Javeed, when you first arrived in the UK, what was life like for yourself and your family?
When I came to UK, I was in Edinburgh because there I was preparing to appear for my primary FRCS for ophthalmology. So I was there for 1.5 years. I passed the exam. But again, in those days, I think it was very difficult to get jobs in ophthalmology because I had full registration. So I had worked for a few, I think 6 months in psychiatry in Saudi. So one of my friends, he said, while you are here trying, why don't you apply for psychiatry? So with his advice and support, I applied. And I got an attachment with Dr. Zeely, who is the author of Companions of Psychiatric Studies. So from there, I applied for a job. And first job I got was in Burnley. From then on, I have been in most of the time in Lancashire. I finished all my training, and life was different because I have seen like life in India, in Iran, in Saudi. But here, one of the things which really impressed me was people were very polite, very hardworking and honest. And it was accountability which really pleased me because everybody was responsible. So we are all supposed to do a proper job. And we have to be transparent and honest. Even if you make a mistake, you have to say, yes, I couldn't do it. So a lot of new things I learned from here. And it has been a pleasure since working there. So eventually in year 2000, I got the consultant job. And then it has been a nice stay in UK, and I have learned a lot from the people.
Because a lot of the jobs and the opportunities are from people that you knew. Obviously, Google didn't exist back then. So how did people kind of progress in their careers? Was it just by word of mouth a lot of the time? And what was the network? What was the kind of situation back in those days?
Yeah, back in those days, see, I probably came earlier than rest of them. I was here in 1975, and the things were entirely different in England. Those days, when I landed in London, then from London I came to Newcastle, and then in the hospital in Northeast I had a clinical attachment, which was a compulsory, and you had to pass clinical attachment to get a full registration, as my college was recognized by GMC. So I took a clinical attachment, and the fact that the moment the letter arrived from England, even the postman knew it was a foreign letter, and he wouldn't give me the letter unless I gave him bakshish. So that was the status of how even the foreign letters were honored. And then when I landed here, a porter came all the way from hospital to airport to pick me up and take me to the hospital, which was a long journey. And he was, immaculately dressed with a, blue double-breasted blazer and all the rest. So I was quite impressed. And then I took my clinical attachment and did my attachment. Because I was used to British system and I did my post-graduation in pediatrics in India, so I was used to writing the history and everything, basically clerking. My job as a clinical assessment was basically to write clerking the patients and come to a clinical diagnosis and discuss management with the consultant. So it was a 4 weeks assessment, and I passed that assessment. And because of my detailed case writing, the people were impressed in the hospital. And one of the pediatricians called me and said, "Here is a job for you." Unfortunately, at that time, I didn't have the GMC full registration because paperwork took about 6 weeks. So I lost the August intake. As it is now, it's a February and August intake. So I lost that August intake, lost that job. Otherwise, I would have been in the Northeast. And then I did some locums. Things were entirely different in those days, and everything was run by the consultants. There was no managers or anything. It was run by consultants. Life was entirely different, and you could see very few Asian faces, and any little towns and villages like that, if you see Asian face, it was presumed to be a doctor. So that was the thing. Asian population was very less. That is how. But I didn't have any influence or anything. I went on my own. I didn't know anybody in England, so I made my own way in pediatrics. So I did a locums in surgery. Believe it or not, first on surgery, I didn't know anything about surgery, but somehow my first job was in surgery, and then medicine, and then finally I got a pediatrics job, long locum, and then from there I moved to a substantial post in Scotland, and ever since there, I remained in Scotland. Those days it was like that. Wherever you got the first full-time job, because of the reference was very important in those days, and you went on your reference to the next job every 6 months. So basically you stayed in the same place. So I stayed the rest of my life in Scotland, basically Lanarkshire, and did my postgraduate and everything. And when I achieved my goal, went to Saudi. That's how I went through the pediatrics career in England.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Dr. Azmi, if I think around your interaction with NHS, what you knew about it, and when you first arrived, and your experience within the NHS, what can you tell people of that relationship that you formed?
The relationship in UK, you meant?
Yes, in the NHS.
Yeah, NHS. I mean, as I told you before, that in medicine, in medical colleges, majority of the medical colleges in India, they were all very well like medical colleges here. The NHS was very popular there, very popular in England, and majority of the people, as I said, they really wanted to go for higher education. So NHS was very well known, and at that time, one thing is very important, that now we have exam entrance exam to come to UK from any country. At that time, there was no exam, there was no visa either, because we were in Commonwealth. So we used to come here and get the visa there. Because all the facilities were available at that time. No entrance exam, stayed here. And as Dr. Mulla said, somebody was there to be. When we came to the hospital, we had our own mess, our own, set where you used to play snookers or tennis or badminton, all that separated for the doctors. We had our own menu in the hospital, and we used to go and sit different doctors' mess, which you cannot imagine at that. So it was excellent, absolutely excellent, and I had really whatever I dreamed for coming over here was fulfilled. Job was exactly what I wanted in surgery. I remained in surgery and did everything. So I'm really grateful to NHS.
And I take it you've stayed around in the Northwest and competed against, say, Sir Alex in terms of the tenure at the same place, the same position.
Yeah, honestly, if you look into, because I had done my fellowship, so I did not have to do more training here. So what happened, I got a first guard job in Windsor Hospital, and then from there, I moved to Wigan. When I moved to Wigan, it looked like my house. Consultants were very nice, and I stayed here until I went to Saudi and came back again here. So I didn't work anywhere else. And both my children were born, and they got educated from here, and they're all around. So England, Northwest, just like my real, looks like I was born, but my children were born here, and I didn't feel anything like I'm away from India or something like that. Not so used to. The only problem was in beginning, honestly, we didn't have proper place to go to eat. There's no halal food. We had to just, sort everything out ourselves, and very difficult to get the meat. So all those things were there. That's a different thing that we expect if you go to, different country. There was no any problem in that. We sorted it out. We learned how to live.
Yeah, and so Dr. Javeed, if I ask you the same question, what was your experience like in the NHS when you first joined?
After working in other countries, once I came here, it was a pleasant surprise for me because people were very supportive. They used to support you for education, for training, and even I realized that even in interviews or trying to find jobs, because in the training you're trying for various other branches of psychiatry, learning disability, alcohol, elderly, whatever. They just look at the work of the individual and the jobs were given. There is no bias whether we are foreigners or local. So that was a very good experience in NHS. It was a pleasure working. And later, when I became a consultant, they say it is very lonely at the top, but particularly in psychiatry, we do what we call a multidisciplinary team meeting. So there are so many people who are there to support us and help us. So many times it was very comforting because there are a lot of other individuals like psychologists, occupational therapists, social workers, other professionals who will be part of your team so that they'll help you make a correct decision. And so you feel comfort and you feel supported. So it has been a good experience in NHS for me.
Yeah, clearly it's a very much a social construct, isn't it? Yeah. How the NHS came into being after the Second World War, and the principles and the values that it promotes and displays. Yeah. Dr. Mulla, how was life like in Scotland? Because I also hear that you have some stories involving pigeons.
Yeah, the life, in general for the doctors was very good. I think I would say, in my view, 70s were the best years I have seen in NHS. NHS was just in the glory days, and then NHS looked after doctors very well. I was in doctors' quarters. Sometimes in doctors, so they put up 8 to 10 doctors in a big home, and then a maid used to come, knock the door in the morning, and give you bed tea, and then you got ready and went to have breakfast. Breakfast was served, and the maids were making hot breakfast for you if you wanted. The cereals were there on the breakfast, the jams, juice, everything. And then all the doctors came down and had a hot breakfast, typical English breakfast with the egg, fried eggs, mushrooms, toast, bacons, everything. Of course, there was no halal thing those days, as my colleague said. And then we also had newspapers. So we read newspapers, we discussed cases with us while we were having breakfast, and that's those days it was like that. And when you're on call, it was very nice as well. They used to keep a big meal for you with your name, like a SHO on call pediatrics, SHO on call pediatrics, or SHO medicine, things like that. They used to keep food for you. They looked after me very well. And then career-wise also, it was very satisfactory. You learned a lot of things. Initially, in my pediatrics first job, as you probably know, there are 2 hospitals, and the lab was in a different hospital about 10, 12 miles away. And they used to send blood specimens via pigeons, you see. So the pigeon service was there, and the pigeons never missed anything. They were excellent, better than human beings. So that was the beginning. And pediatrics also, I learned about neonatal. In those days, there was no ventilator, there was no high-tech resuscitation or anything. I used to just put intubation and bag and mask resuscitation. And I had seen a lot of congenital abnormalities in those days, heart problems, and then spina bifida, and chromosomal abnormalities, all those kind of things. But gradually, when I moved to next pediatric job, then we had ventilators. So I'm proud to say that our batch we were pioneers in ventilating babies. So when I was on call, some nights I used to ventilate 3 babies at a time. So it was busy, very busy. At the same time, you learned quite a lot. And in those days, I was busy with exchanging babies, blood transfusion because of Rh negative, Rh incompatibility. But luckily, medical science has made huge advances, and now NTD injection is there, so you don't see so many Rh incompatibility. Same thing with congenital abnormalities. You can detect antenatally, and some of the treatment also antenatally. You can even do heart surgery antenatally. So all the things are progressed. So I was lucky to learn all that process along with medical advancement. And in those days, children with cancers, we had no treatment at all. It was so sorry to see them. But today, it is curable. Some of the cancers are curable, and all those things are. So it was very satisfying for the professional as well as the social life. So both, I would say thank you to NHS for providing all that.
If I come to you and try to reflect on the fact that you've lived in the Northwest, let's say around 3 decades, give or take, and you also talked about your children being brought up here. Obviously, they spent some of their life in Saudi Arabia. Have you ever thought of leaving the country to go back to India or a different country? And I guess the second question would be, what would you say if your children actually wanted to move to a different country?
I mean, at that time, as you know, children were very small. They were in school and they went to college. No, first and most important thing is coming over here. I said to you in the beginning was higher education, and moving to other country for me from here, not on at all. Because at that time, few of my colleagues, they came from India, they stayed here, they got everything, but they moved to America. They thought America is the best country. There's no choice. I was tempted as well to them, but at one stage I said, no, I love England. England has given me everything. I was so used to this life that time. I had no plan for going anywhere else. In Saudi, I went because during this transient period, it was a different country and everybody knew Saudi is not for permanent migration. So it was just for temporary. Absolutely, this was in the back of my mind that either I will come back or go to India. As you asked, I ever had planned to go back? Yes. We all came, majority of, I won't say all, maybe all my 32 colleagues, all came here that we'll go back. We never thought we'll ever stay here. We never. But you know yourself, once you come, you see a country which is very, very cooperative, they help you, and systems are different, and that's human nature. That's what happened in my family in India. We were from UP, then migrated to Mumbai. You understand me? So they love in Mumbai. Now I love staying here. So yes, I had a plan to go back, and eventually it faded out. The children grew up, they went to school, and then they went to medical school. Then nothing out of my mind. I was comfortable. I mean, still I love India. I go to holidays. My family, my parents are not there anymore, as you know. But, my brothers are there. We do go there. It's a lovely country where we were born. I'm proud of it. This is my country now.
Yeah, no, I fully understand. But if, as I said, if your children wanted to move and work somewhere, let's say, because there's lots of graduates, lots of doctors moving on to, say, New Zealand or Australia, or possibly even to the Middle East. What would your response be?
My response would be yes. If they really want to explore, why not? They got a good country here, and they can explore, they can go. I have no problem. I would recommend them. If there is somewhere they're tempting, new generation, they have to look into it. I fully support them.
If I come to you, Dr. Javeed, what would your advice be to a lot of the graduates who are thinking about, leaving the country, getting experience in different cultures, different environments?
Which graduates you're talking about?
Just anyone who's graduated from med school and done the foundation training. Yes, from UK.
Means if they want to explore it, it's up to them. But I think nowadays the doctors also, they're quite well informed, and they look at all the pros and cons of various countries. But I guess overall there won't be another place which is as supportive as UK, in my opinion. But people want to go as explore, it is up to them. They have to decide.
Yeah. Would you say, Dr. Mulla, that was the kind of response that your family may have had when you were thinking about moving to the UK? If you want to explore, if you want to experience that environment, then you have.
My children are concerned. My children are, I think, they like UK. At present, they want to stay in UK and proceed with their careers. But if they want to go somewhere else, yes, fair enough. Why not? Just like we explored, different countries. If they want to see different countries, gain experience in different countries, answer is yes. I would definitely support them. But my gut feeling is that all three children like NHS and they would stay here.
Yeah, I fully understand, Dr. Azmi, because when you first came to this country, there was lots of decisions you had to make, either on your own or Mrs. Azmi. What's the value? I guess what's the value of leadership for you, and what role models did you have to try and help you through that journey of settling in, getting used to this environment, because everything was quite new?
Yeah, that's a very good question. First I tell you, there was no Mrs. Azmi, I'm afraid, at that time.
Okay.
I was alone, a single man. And so Mrs. Azmi joined me in 1981. So yes, because, as you know, a lot of people used to come here at that time. When we were in a school, in medical college, we met a couple of people, they were working in England. And they used to tell about it. So when we moved in, we knew we are going to a new environment. There was no problem. Most important thing is there's no problem for our language. We used to speak English there, we used to learn in English. There was nothing like any different language. So language was not, because there's no language problem. And our culture are more or less, honest to God, same. I used to tie, suit, shirt, everything like I used to do. I did, which you do here. So there was no much difference, except, as I said to you, it was very cold, temperature was different, and we coped very well because our mind was set. We are going for education, and the moment I got my job from there. So training and everything was there. So aim and objective was fulfilled. All those things happens anyway. So there was no problem at all for adjustment, from my point of view, for me.
Okay. And Dr. Javeed, in terms of role models for you, who would you say kind of defined your own kind of personal and professional choices?
I mean, the only role models I can say which influenced my life were my parents. So we have just grown up looking at how they have been. Basically, the only 3 things they asked me to do was wherever I had to work hard and sincerely. Secondly, he always advised me, wherever you go, wherever you work, just make sure that you don't forget any other relatives who are in need of any kind of help. And the most important thing my father always told me was to be humble and to be polite with people, not to have an ego that you're a doctor, you are this or whatever. Just be polite and humble in your dealings with other people. And once I came to UK, it was a pleasure because everybody is so polite, friendly. Even you go for a walk, somebody will pass you. And even though we don't know that person, they'll say, good morning, how are you? Nice weather. So these are the things which really help us to settle in UK.
Yeah. Dr. Mulla, if I ask you about your role model in defining your journey or defining you as a person, who would you say?
Yeah, the first thing is when I arrived here, there were a lot of friends from my college, and some were seniors, and they were kind of a role model. They were guiding us what to do, where to apply, how to study, how to pass the exams, and how to behave with the staff, how to behave with consultants, and all the rest. So they were the initial ones, and then people were all all the doctors more or less from the subcontinent and supported each other. To tell you, first when I doing the clinical attachment, I wanted to go, and the first weekend was off, and I wanted to go and see my friends in Wigan, And so I didn't have money. I came here to this country with a £2.5 exchange rate. Those days, India was very tough with exchange, so I had only £2.5. And one of the SHO from Pakistan, she gave me £5 and said, "Don't worry, this is enough for you. You go to Wigan." And she told me how to go to Wigan and all the rest. So that was my first place visited after coming to this country was Wigan. And for some reason, that became a permanent. My best friends are in Wigan still, you see. So still I have connection from Wigan for the last 40 years. So that's how people were supportive of each other. And even our own consultants, they supported. If you wanted to go to somewhere else, anything, they guided you as well. When you're off, they were very good with you. So that was the thing. Then I had some professional role models, some of the famous pediatricians, neonatal pediatricians, Pamela Davis, she was my role model. I wanted to be like her. She was the first pediatrician to write a book on neonatology. And at the same time, there were great people like Hutchinson in Glasgow, who wrote a textbook as well. And some of the child protection people, like Helen Hammond is there, Alison Kemp from Cardiff. These were the people, I was following how to do the things and their method of dealing with it professionally. So those are the role models, and this is a very, I'm very lucky to have all those people around me and who guided me, and then took a nice career.
Yeah. Thank you. Dr. Azmi, if you think around the responsibilities of a doctor in this current climate, do you think it's very different to how you had to practice back in those days?
Nowadays, honestly, if you ask me, this very easy to practice now, junior training. Reason is training is all set. There's a deanery, and if you are in it, your job is guaranteed. But you have to move from one hospital to another hospital every 6 months or a year or 2 years to complete your training. So this is very easy. During our time, it was very, very difficult to move further to the level of consultant. Because there's no any system. There was a system for working here, and you get stuck up to the registrar. The registrar, it was very, very difficult to progress because there was no any system that can lead you to that journey. It was just depend on your consultant, and they can refer you, they can promote you if there is any job, consultant job coming in. Otherwise, it was difficult. Another most important thing nowadays, tell my children are doctors that you're lucky. We were working 1 in 2. One day and night we were on call. Second morning we used to get up and do the round. Then we are off only for that day, then come back again. But now European directive has come up. Now my registrar comes, he said, oh, my hours is finished, now I'm going. I can't tell him to work more. Otherwise, if anything happens, and he said he was tired. And now, you can look into the consultant now. Sleep. If you are up after 12 o'clock, something, next morning I'm off. And these things were not there at that time. Nobody knew how much we are working. We have to be there in the morning with the consultant. That's the difference. So it's very easy to practice now. That's my feeling.
And Dr. Mulla, because revalidation probably started while you were still working, so you could have done a pre and post experience about revalidation. Is that fair to say?
Yes, revalidation. See in my experience, NHS has changed beyond recognition from when I started to what it is now. As Dr. Azmi said, training is good and all the rest. I started with the 1-in-1 rota, and sometimes consultants used to come and relieve me to have a shower and all the rest for a few hours and then start. So that is how difficult it was in those days. And 1-in-2 was a luxury for me. That means you are working 32 hours when you are on call or the weekdays, and about 72 to 80 hours when you are on call on the weekend. So it was 1-in-2, very tough job. With that, you still had no formal training like you people have just now. The teaching session is allocated to the juniors now. In our days, there was no teaching session as such. So we had to do our own studies and pass exams at the same time, do 1-in-2 rota, and it was a very tough going. Dr. Azmi will agree with me. This is how the life was there. But at the moment, it is okay. And how things changed. When I started, it was a regional health authority. And then came the general managers, I think in the 80s. Then the Tory government came and they brought the trust. That was another big change in the NHS. And then came the GMC thing because of a Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman story, and because of that, I think GMC pendulum swung to the other direction, and they made this appraisal and revalidation. And I remember Many of my colleagues left NHS, took early retirement because of that, because they were so much worried about what is appraisal and revalidation going to be. But I said, I didn't bother about them. And then appraisal was a good process. And now, every year we have appraisal, and it has become a routine. At the same time, revalidation is also, there is no formal interview or anything. Once you have 5 years of assessment, the GMC does revalidation as well. So I have no problem with appraisal or revalidation.
So I guess for the viewers and listeners, just about the importance of revalidation, it's a process that takes place every 5 years to make sure that you have the right skills, knowledge, competence, etc., to practice as a doctor. But in between, there are yearly appraisals, which can be tasking at times. But Dr.
But it's a good process. Excuse me, it is a good process. Yeah. You have to do PDP, you have to do audit, and it keeps you up to date with the present knowledge. So from that, I enjoy doing that, because every year I do some audit and some new research, some new PDP, and all the rest. So it is interesting, challenging as well.
Yeah, because it makes you think. I have to do something. So what are my opportunities? So it's so that's always a good opportunity to progress further, both from a personal as well as a professional standpoint. Dr. Javeed, in terms of, obviously we've touched on the European Working Time Directive. What was work life for you before that came in? And are there any kind of stories that you can share?
My experience is similar to what Dr. Azmi and Dr. Mulla said. In those days, I think compared to now, in psychiatry, there was no patient-to-doctor contact. And we were there in the front line. And I can remember going on Friday morning to the hospital and coming back on Monday evening, because I'm working during daytime on Friday. I'll be on night on Friday, the whole weekend. And then Monday morning, I'll be doing my normal work and come back on Monday evening. So it was something which we were somehow managing, but it was quite stressful in those days. Nowadays, I think compared to those days, the training is more streamlined. And I think it is good that like if somebody is on call 24 hours or 12 hours, they get similar period of time off so that they can recover and come back to work. Apart from that, I think we were doing more assessments at home and in outpatient because it was how it was in those days. But now there are so many different teams, early interventions team and CPNs. They have got a lot of responsibilities now, so they look at all the clients, patients, and then they direct those who need consultants' input to those. But in those days, we have to see all the patients. So I think it is more organized now, but there are a few things maybe they could improve as time goes on.
And Dr. Azmi, I'm going to talk more generally about immigration. So if you think about the word immigration, back in, say, 2000 or 2003, when a survey was done, it was less than 10% in terms of people in this country who found immigration as a very important area to discuss and be aware of. But when we look now at, say, around the time of the EU referendum, for example, immigration was one of the most core topics. Why did that transition happen? Are people becoming more aware of the benefits, or are there other conversations that people have about immigration?
The topic of immigration is highly discussed in UK at the moment as compared to before. I think due to this European referendum is being highlighted so much on the television, all the time it is Brexit, Brexit, Brexit coming up. People got fed up, and immigration is the main concern about the general public here, because they think a lot of people are coming from EEC country without any check. That's their legal right if they are in EEC country. There are a lot of benefit from this as well, as people are taught different things by different people, different parties. So that's what they're talking now. Before, it was not any concern because people were coming here from the doctor from some continent, and they were all checked, and they had exam. Nowadays, recently, they came in entrance exam, so people were not aware of anything, and there are not many people working here at the medical profession. Now, due to EEC, as people are free to come, they're right. They are in general public as well. This is the reason they are being discussed. Otherwise, still in UK, people by and large, they do realize that without immigration, it will be difficult to run the country, especially social care and healthcare.
And Dr. Mulla, if I come to you, what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, immigration is a very complex topic. Unfortunately, it is painted in the same brush. If you take the examples of the doctors are highly skilled, educated people, and the NHS needed immigrant doctors, particularly from the subcontinent and Africa. And these doctors are needed to build NHS, and they were the pillars of NHS. And even today, you can see the majority of the doctors who are in the front line fighting the COVID-19 are from the BME background, and you can see they sacrifice their life. So many doctors, died working in the front line. So that is the greatest thing for the immigrant doctors. So this is one category. The other category is those who are not skilled. When they come to have a jobs, take up the jobs, and that is where I think the public, takes a different meaning of immigration. Whereas if there is a skilled people nowadays, I think I see a lot of IT people coming from abroad because they are needed here. So when it is like a demand and supply, I have seen few cycles of doctors, demand and cycle in the NHS itself. Like that, every field is like that. If you need a skilled workers, yes, that is fine. But what happens is during election time, election becomes a very hot topic. See, every election, it becomes a hot topic and hot topic, and the politicians twist that and use it for their advantages. This is how immigration has more or less, come to lose its term, and then people see immigrants as a, not wanted community. See, so as I said, it is a very complex, and you can't brush with the same, you can't brush them with the same brush. So you have to see who is who. Skilled and non-skilled workers are different. That's how I feel about immigration.
Yeah. Dr. Javeed, if I come to you, obviously you can give your own thoughts about that conversation about immigration, but I would also value your feelings about the importance of immigration and healthcare in this country. Where would the NHS be without immigration?
Well, I think immigrant doctors, they play a very vital role in NHS, particularly from Indian subcontinent, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or even European doctors. And immigration is important because a lot of, I think, British doctors, they are going abroad also to Australia, New Zealand. So there is shortage. And the immigrant doctors, they work hard, and quite a few, particularly from India, I have seen already they have done a MD or MS, so they're quite experienced also. So I think NHS is depending on a lot of immigrant doctors also. And it's a good mix. That's what I feel.
And Dr. Azmi, I know our time's dwindling away. It's been a really fascinating journey speaking to you all three, but I wanted to get your tips. I guess what tips would you give those individuals who have recently come to this country, whether it be a short-term decision or long-term? Things change very quickly, but what kind of tips would you advise them?
The tips which I should give to the people coming here, especially young doctors, most important thing is that you should fulfill your ambition of coming over here. Majority of the time, I'm sure it is education. Be prepared for hard work and get into the system and try to get into the deanery system, which is important for you to lead to your final destination, that is consultant or GP, whatever you want to be. But that's one tip. Second tip is the culture here is a bit different, but I'm sure with the language-wise and other ways, majority of the people, especially the doctors community, they are not much different except in the local situation where you have to get adjusted and try to be polite as people are here, try to learn from them. And being a doctor is very easy to learn from the patients as well about their culture. So this will be helpful. Third and most important thing is, if you want to stay here, that's well and good. It's your choice. But if you want to go back, you take all good things from here. That's all I can say, which I have gone through.
Thank you. And Dr. Mulla, in terms of top tips you would give someone that perhaps is in a situation that you found yourself in all those years ago?
Yes, those youngsters who have come in here, first I would say is, work hard. And in NHS, if you work hard, you can achieve whatever you want. There is no problem over that. Second thing I would say is, our doctors, particularly from India, are very good theory masters. They are very good in theory, but they need to learn communication skills, how to communicate with the patients, their relatives and colleagues and everybody. So important thing is to learn communication skills. That is very, very, very important, which is lacking. That's one. Third thing I would say is be proud of your roots and culture and maintain your identity. That's what my tips would be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Mulla. And Dr. Javeed, what would you advise those individuals?
They have to identify the positive things in them. First, how polite they are, how sincere they are in their work, how accountable they are. They are welcoming you, so you are given a job, you are given the opportunity to study, to progress in your career, in your life. So they have to be thankful and also to be to adjust to these circumstances. Secondly, they have to portray their own personality, their own culture in a proper way and integrate with the local people so that you exchange good qualities with each other, and then so that it can be a cohesive and nice society or community together.
Yeah, so there's lots of wise words coming from each corner of the screen as I look at it. I guess when I think about immigration, it's I don't think it's ever going to end. If we think around the post-Second World War, we had the Windrush generation who are very integral. We're talking about from the African states, but in addition to that, Pakistan and other countries within the South Asia, they're integral in terms of building the cities back up, making sure NHS actually function in terms of social systems. So immigration and healthcare are very much intertwined. But I just want to thank all three of you, Dr. Javeed, Dr. Azmi, and Dr. Mulla, for sharing your time to discuss this as well as your own unique experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.